Hey, changemakers! Thank you for tuning into the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. I'm your fervent feminist host, Raven O'Neill, and I get the honors of sitting down weekly with diverse experts from all walks of life to explore ideas, opportunities, and strategies that we can all use to hack our way to better lives within patriarchal societies. If you're ready to hack patriarchal systems and structures, I invite you to join us and help move the needle. Hi, listeners. Today I'm sitting down with Courtney Johnson. Courtney is an embodiment and relationship coach with over a decade of experience helping people create lives and relationships that they absolutely love. She's an IFC coach with a presence-based coaching certification. Courtney has spent much of her life traveling all over the world, living in a vast array of different cultures, expanding her viewpoints and abilities. The work she does with her clients happens in mind, body, heart, and spirit. She supports people in creating lives and relationships that are in radical alignment with their integrity, values, and vision, and helps them on their path to wholeness and evolution. She aims to live an adventurous life led by her heart, intuition, and truth. Let's come together and offer Courtney a very warm welcome. Welcome to the show, Courtney. I'm excited to have you on today. Today, we are going to be diving into balancing masculine and feminine in a patriarchal society. No idea where this conversation is truly going to take us because there's so much to cover. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Raven. I'm really excited to talk about this topic in particular.
Awesome. It is a much needed topic because men also suffer from the patriarchy, and sometimes we don't realize how out of balance things are. I think a great starting place for this conversation, actually, I have taken to starting in this place this entire year. So it is a great starting place. Getting a little bit about your background and how you ended up on the show.
Well, I'm a coach now. I'm an embodiment and relationship coach. And I think my whole life I've been a coach, really, but it took me a while for this to be my career, as is for many of us. But my professional background before that was in user experience design, as well as management and leadership in tech startups on engineering teams. And so a big part of, I think, how I came to these, to really like learning about and leaning into this masculine and feminine energies was my experience in my career, where I was typically the only woman on my teams and typically the only woman in leadership, as well as a sort of messy relationship background, just kind of guided me towards, well, I can feel that I'm not fitting in. I can feel that this environment wasn't created for me. So what am I supposed to do here? I know that work can be great. I know that relationships can be great. Otherwise, why are we doing them? And so I just kind of made it my mission to love my work and love my relationships. And that's how I came to this path. Yeah.
There's so much I want to dive into there, especially coming from startup. It is generally a very male heavy ecosystem. Looking at how you fit in there and then how you addressed it, because I know we had some conversations offline about masculine and feminine, and every human being has a little bit of both, and where it balances out is important to fitting into where you want to be. And I don't know, we could look at, I don't know what would be most interesting for you to speak to and for the listeners to enjoy, the difference of, is it better to adjust that to fit into spaces or to show up authentically and then let it balance out naturally?
Well, when I'm working with women, what's actually most important to me is to figure out what they want and what they want from a place of their truth and their heart and their true essence. And so if they come to me and they say, I want to embody a more masculine role at work, help me, I say yes. We make sure where that's coming from. But if they come to me and they say, I don't fit in, I don't see my type of leadership reflected in the people I see around me, but I do want to lead, I do want to participate. What do I do? Then that's where we go. I think what's important to me in my work is that women are honoring their desires and that they're honoring their nature. And so we always start there. I think my personal belief is if we start there by honoring our true desires and honoring our nature, we listen deeply to the wisdom there. That will guide us in speaking up, altering systems where we can, influencing systems where we can, and at the very least, revealing the impact that those systems or that those people are having on us so that they change.
Thank you for that answer. That was a great answer. I love looking at that desire point. I would beg the question, and I'm not sure this is something you normally address, but I would beg the question of how do you know when you're looking at those desires, what is masculine and what is feminine, and how do you use that to your advantage to make those decisions on desire and kind of move through the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think I would label a desire as masculine or feminine, but I think when you're working with desire, it takes a little bit of trial and error to feel where that's coming from. And so one of the things I do with my clients and with women in particular is help them access their true desire. Because we do have this innate desire that is very woven with our power and our wisdom. And so that's the one we want to pull on, right? We want to pull on the desire that's entangled with our wisdom and with our power. But there's also a want, which is more maybe grasping or more coming from a place of wounding or coming from a place of unprocessed anger or coming from our ego. And I find that, if we feed those wants, we don't really end up in a place where we're fulfilled. We don't end up in a place where the systems have changed for the betterment of everyone. But if we are listening to that more deep rooted, way below surface level, way below rational physical reality, the sort of inner voice that doesn't really make sense or is a little inconvenient, that's the one that I'm interested in women listening to and acting from, and the one that I think anytime we make a choice from that place, it's in service to the whole. It's in service to men and women.
I don't know. I don't want you to give too much away because this is what you actually do in your work. But how might you pull that out? Are there easy hacks for our listeners to use to just kind of look at that deep space and without giving too much away, differentiate the desire versus the want and how to utilize it?
Mm-hmm. I think for this answer, a lot of it is going to be rooted in your felt sense in your body. And so I am an embodiment coach. So we spend a lot of time listening to the neck down. And in fact, 90% of our bodily information is from the neck down. But we're so tuned into the channel of the neck up into our minds. And so just like you might change a radio station, what women and I do together is we learn to change the channel from the channel of our thoughts, which is normally where it's at, to the channel of our bodies, to the channel of our emotions, to the channel of our wisdom, right? And I'll say it's usually a felt sense, as in the desire is being birthed from the bottom up. And it's something that they feel in their stomach or in their hearts or in this region of their body, as opposed to a thought, which is typically trying to solve your whole life in one fell swoop, if I just had this thing, then everything would be good, right? Real desire doesn't really work that way. Real desire is unfolding. And so it does take trial and error, willingness to experiment, willingness to trust the thing that's inconvenient, inside of you. But I would say if you're looking for this clue, look for a felt sense of rightness, a felt sense of alignment, a felt sense of fulfillment, right? Because a want is kind of once I get this, then I'll be fulfilled. Where a desire is it's actually fulfilling to move towards this right now in the moment.
That is the perfect dovetail into my next question. When you are helping women, especially again, the neck down, you're absolutely nailed it there. How do you help them develop a healthy inner masculine? And then what does that mean for how they move through the world with that?
Yeah. Well, this is one of my favorite questions because I'm totally obsessed with a healthy masculine and especially a healthy inner masculine because I think masculinity has become so distorted that I think some of us think masculinity and think bad. And that like couldn't be any further from the truth. And we don't want to reject our own masculine. We want to cultivate it because we need it to be our full, radiant, dynamic, interesting, selves as women in the world. So yeah, let me try to peel back the first layer here of what am I talking about? And yeah, we'll go from there. So first of all, we're used to the terms masculinity and femininity, and we all have associations with those terms. Those are not the terms I'm talking about. So you and I and everyone listening, we can just kind of like set those terms on the shelf for a moment. We can come back to them. What we're talking about is an inner masculine and inner feminine. It's a different way of relating to the same words. But we all have an inner masculine and inner feminine, regardless of sex or gender. And our inner masculine and inner feminine are really two sides of the same coin. And we need them both to survive, and we definitely need them both to thrive. And so, what our inner masculine is our awareness of ourselves and our inner structure. And I'll say more in a moment, but what our inner feminine is anything going on energetically inside of us. And so our inner feminine is our emotions, our sensations, our true essence, our desires, our impulses, right? All of that going on inside of us. And our inner masculine is our ability to be aware of that and our ability to hold that. And when we have a unhealthy inner masculine, which many of us do because we live in the petri dish of the patriarchy. So when we have an unhealthy inner masculine, what that means is we have a judgmental awareness towards ourselves. So we look within at our inner feminine and we say, I shouldn't feel that, right? It's shameful to think that. It's inconvenient to want that, right? It's kind of like a shaming awareness. And also, if we have an unhealthy container, we oppress, suppress, hide, deny, attempt to control what's within us, right? That sounds familiar. That's what the patriarchy is doing, right? And so that's what's going on inside of us. But the good news is we can develop a healthy inner masculine. And what that looks like is having a loving awareness, right? You can look at yourself, you can look within and say, I actually love that about myself. I can look upon that with objectivity, not judging that. And what a healthy masculine container does is you're able to hold and be with everything that's going on inside of you, all your contradictions, all your complexities, all your messiness of being human, and have enough space for that, have enough strength to be with that and sort through what's real here and then take action based on that. So your masculine is also helping you express, but it's like, what are you expressing? Are you expressing what the world thinks you should be expressing? Because that doesn't feel good. Or are you using your strength, using your container, using your body to express your true essence? So let me pause there because that's, the definitions of inner masculine and inner feminine and see where you're at.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to continue in that part of the discussion. I do have another question that would lead us elsewhere, but it is related.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. So you did mention all of this being kind of inner, right? So I was wondering, and I don't know if this is something you teach, coach, or deal with in this sphere, but how that might also manifest outwardly. You mentioned the judgment and going through life and those things, and I imagine when it manifests outwardly, it looks kind of the same but different because you're projecting it into the world versus internalizing it.
Yes. Yeah. I love that question. And And that's why we start internally, because that's where everything starts. But you're right. Your inner masculine is also interacting with your partner, is interacting with your boss, is interacting with the world. And if we take this concept of masculinity as structure outside of our bodies, masculine is any structure. So it's any process, any system, any institution. And so as we can see, we're in a sort of an unhealthy masculine paradigm on that level. But you're right. I bring this out, especially when I'm working with women who want a better or, liberating relationship with their man, or if I'm working with a couple, because maybe we can hold ourselves really, really well. Maybe we can look at ourselves without judgment. But what happens when we look at our partner? What lens are we seeing him through? What pain have we not processed that we now see him through? Maybe we're able to hold our emotions, but if he's having big emotions, we can't hold it. We can't be a strong container in the presence of him. And so we can start to see the inner masculine everywhere, notice how we're interacting with it, noticing what kind of structures we have created, because again, that's the masculine. Like, what's my schedule like? What are my agreements like with my partner? What kind of boundaries do I have at work? And the question that I always ask is like, are those structures liberating? That's the point of a structure, right? We live in a structure, patriarchal structure that's limiting, that is oppressive, that is controlling. Structures are meant to be liberating in my world. And so that's what we do is we say, where's our inner masculine at? Is it liberating us? Where's our masculine at? And the structures we've created, are they liberating us?
I feel like you should not have any shortage of work when you say that, because that made it feel very much like it is a lifelong process. This is not a quick fix. It's when you mentioned that, I saw the friction, because you had said that you might not have it internally, but you're coping with it externally. And all I thought is, can you have it together internally, really, and cope with it externally? I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, tell me what you mean by cope with what?
Sorry, maybe not coping. Maybe coping wasn't the right word. You had said like they hold their emotions internally, but they're dealing with someone else who externally is, I don't know if it's externally they're having an issue, but I imagine that in order to do it well, you have to have it all together, both internally and externally, which was what led me to it's that sounds like a lifelong work process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think it is, right? Like I've been working on this for a long time and I'm not perfect. I don't aim to be perfect, but I would say I'm holistically feeling a lot better, feeling a lot more like myself, able to hold, channel, process my own big emotional waves, which are huge. I'm a very emotional person. Something that women do is they sometimes are able to hold and accept another person, but they can't hold and accept themselves, right? So we're really good at meeting our husband's needs and meeting our children's needs and, letting our children be have big tantrums and have big feelings and all of these things, but we don't know how to turn that inward and give ourselves the same level of acceptance and love. And so it is probably a lifelong journey. I don't expect to reach some like ultimate stage of this being done, but I do think there's a threshold where you're kind of like, whoa, okay, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling more liberated. And now it's more fun, right? It's like it's more playful once you get to this place and it doesn't feel this big, like, well, I guess I have to work on this for the rest of my life type thing.
I mean, we should all be working on something forever, I feel.
Sure, yeah.
Like there's therapy, there's coaching, there's your masculine feminine coaching. There should always be something to work on. You have mentioned the patriarchal several times, which I love. Thank you. It is hacking the patriarchy. And I want to discuss, we had again chatted offline very quickly about patriarchal systems and structures and really the patriarchy likes to favor the aggressive, bold, masculine behavior and way of doing things. For most women, it does feel unnatural to do those things in that way. And myself included, I feel like I have to do it that way. So how might you coach someone like myself who feels that pressure to lean into the natural rhythms and the natural way of being while still succeeding in a world built for the aggressive approach?
I mean, this is something that I work on within myself too, because I have my own business and I don't want to run myself ragged, making it work, making money, all of those things. And we do live in a culture that says you have to grind, you have to hustle, you have to sacrifice. You have to always be growing. You have to always be producing. You always have to be making more money, right? And so the first thing is, of course, becoming aware that that's the petri dish we're in. And so, but it's not how we have to behave. And so I ask women, like, what do you want to be true? Because this is how we create a different paradigm, not by fitting ourselves into the current one, but by literally making a new one, not by judging the old one, just making a new one. And so it's like, what do you want to be true? And for most women, they'll say, I want to do what I love. I want to make money and I want to be well rested. I want my creations, I want my work to come from a place of ease and flow. And that doesn't mean I'm not willing to show up when I'm tired or show up when I'm scared, right? But like, what are the two things that you want to be true? You want to be successful and you want to be yourself. Okay, I believe you. I believe that's possible. Let's marry those things together now. What does that look like? How might you change your behaviors if that were true? What beliefs might you need to let go of? What egoic ideas of how your life was going to be might you need to let go of, right? But when women come to me and say, I want to succeed and I want to be myself, I'm all in on that. Like, we both have to be all in on that. And we decide what that means. And then we get really practical, meaning like, okay, how do you show up that way? What does that mean for your schedule? What does that mean for your children? What does that mean for your rest? What does that mean for your creativity? And over time they build it, you know?
Yeah. I love when my guests offer packs, and those were all the hacks right there, all those questions, because I feel like there is that struggle you had talked about, wanting to make money, but also show up authentically. And sometimes I love to make assumptions on the show. I assume that in most situations in the society we live in, those two have a fair amount of friction. So you're going to be imbalanced in that you're either going to make a ton of money, but maybe not authentically, or you're going to show up authentically and somehow that doesn't mean making a ton of money, or it
Yeah.
doesn't equal making a ton of money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And although I do work with women in the realm of leadership and developing the culture that they know is best for everyone, I don't normally help women like build their business. My realm is more in the leadership realm or the relationship realm.
And I'm so glad you mentioned relationship because we're going to move a little into that. We're going to do a little bit of a pivot. Again, we've had some small conversations offline. And when we did, we discussed relationships and how women sometimes stay in relationships that aren't working. They close off their heart. They don't necessarily work to balance it out and make it better. And so we had discussed that being one of the things you work with. Would you mind telling me more about that?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's true, right? I think every woman in the world has reached a point where they found themselves in a relationship that they didn't mean to choose, right? And then they have to navigate from there. But what a lot of women do is they just kind of stay there. They close their heart. Anything they're trying with their partner's not working. They're overburdened, especially if there's young children. They're working, they're exhausted, and they say, well, he's not that bad. Like, we'll just watch TV every night and I'll do my thing and he'll do his thing and, whatever. Like, they try to dim their desire to fit instead of disrupt. And, yeah, it's painful. I mean, I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. I'm sure most women listening to this have been in a state where your heart is closed, and it's awful to live that way. It hurts you. It's diminishing yourself. Anytime you diminish yourself, you are diminishing your partner's potential for greatness. Anytime your partner diminishes himself, it's the same. And so it's like layer by layer, I work with women to start revealing what it is that they want with very specific ways of doing it, right? Because the patterns that most women fall into is either number one, they withhold, or number two, they do say what they want and need, but with criticism, judgment, or shame laced in. And so we have to stop the patterns of withholding where you're denying what you want, trying to convince yourself out of what you want, exhausting yourself doing that. Or when you do finally speak up, you're saying it through judgment, criticism, or shame. Even subtle judgment, criticism, or shame, it's ineffective. Also, I just don't think we want to be like that, right? We don't want to be subtly shaming people into showing up differently.
I love that. I feel like, and yes, I've been in those positions, even looking at my own history and doing the like inner work. I feel like for so long I have been the person to not speak up. And then I will always get to the point where if this is going to work, I have to speak up. And then I move into speaking up, and I'm in that mode of speaking up that you mentioned. Like, nothing good coming out of it.
Yes. Yeah. So good. Right. And it's hard as women because we're conditioned to be quiet. We're conditioned to make everyone else happy. Our nervous systems are wired for others. So there's a lot that we have to work with. I always say work with in order to show up fully with an open heart, because that's what's going to make change is when you're open heart, unguarded body, vulnerable, telling the truth. If every woman today started showing up with their partner, unguarded body, open heart, told the truth again and again and again, I mean, I think the world would change in 2 weeks.
So you've mentioned an open heart several times, and then you just gave that definition. Is that the definition where you work towards?
Yes, yeah, I would say so. Yeah, open-hearted meaning I'm not blocked by, I'm not allowing myself. Something that's important when we're doing this work is that you really take 100% responsibility for yourself and speak that way. And so an open heart means like, I'm not choosing to be blocked by resentment. I'm not choosing to allow pain of the past to close my body. I mean, it's literally a physical armoring and a physical closure that doesn't feel good. It's not effective. And so you have to choose, I'm going to open my heart to myself. If there's resentment there, that's allowed. If there's anger there, that's allowed. If there's fear there, that's allowed. And I'm still going to show up with an open heart to my partner and tell him what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, how he's impacting me, what I need, what I want, in service to both of us.
All right. I am going to pivot again, and I'm going to ask, this will be my final question,
Okay.
and then we'll move into to closing the show out. But I'm going to ask this question because it is so much fun. And when I presented it to you, I just think it's such a great way to kind of close out the conversation. And that is, we had talked about truly healing the gender gap. And if women were thriving on their own terms and men were actively showing up in support of that liberation, what would the world look like?
First of all, amazing question. Isn't it so fun? I mean, we can both just take a minute and like dream because it's so fun. And I think every person listening to this podcast should dream. and then do the thing, reverse engineer that reality. But let me actually answer the question. So I'm actually just kind of listening inward because this is what I want, women to be doing. And so I'm first noticing that I don't actually have an image, but I'm getting feelings. And so I'm just feeling balance, aliveness, reciprocity, equality, joy, so I'm just kind of getting these feelings. And if I let that be specific, right? Because I think a lot of women, we get visions, but then we really have to ground it into reality when we want to create change. So if I let that be really specific, I think what I feel is, I think I see women trusting their wisdom, acting on that wisdom, men learning to trust that wisdom. And when that happens, it creates a virtuous cycle between our complementary natures, right? We share our wisdom, they act on it, it benefits us, our wisdom benefits them. It's like this beautiful cycle. I see the earth being really well tended and cared for and brought back into its fullness. The relationship of us taking from it no longer exists. It's more of a reverence and a reciprocity. I see perhaps different options than the nuclear family, which I think is a real challenge for society right now, or, better community, better support for mothers, better support for young children. Sex culture, completely different than it is now. We have an environment that I think we can all admit is sick. And so that means we're sick. And so I would see a reduction in mental health issues. I would see a reduction in menstrual cycle issues for women's bodies, which take a brunt of the sickness. Reduction in autoimmune disorders. I think the way we relate to work and how we work would completely change. I think that women would benefit from marriage, right? Statistically, it's shown that only men benefit from marriage. So I think women would also benefit from marriage. And I think overall, people would be allowed to be whole and their wholeness would be celebrated.
Oh, that was so beautiful. I almost started to cry. You mentioned reciprocity twice, and I
Yeah.
do think that bringing that into better balance would heal a lot of the things you mentioned, because it is out of balance, and I feel like that out of balance causes resentment, and that resentment is a huge friction in the world.
Yes. Yeah, well said.
That was so beautiful. Thank you for that. All right. I love to wrap the show up with 3 hacks. I ask each guest to throw out 3 hacks the listeners can use today based on the topic to better their lives.
Good. I think I'm not only going to give 3 hacks, but it's like a step-by-step thing.
I love it.
And so number 1 is and especially for women, but tune into yourself and get clear on what you want. Really get clear on what you want. Own it, claim it, see it, allow it, even if it's inconvenient. Write those things down. This is what I want. And if you have a hard time getting in touch with what you want, you can start with this isn't working, right? This is what I'm tolerating. My man's driving me crazy, right? And so you can look at the inverse, but really you have to get clear on what you want. Step 1. Step 2, communicate that through an open heart. Communicate that through an open heart. If it's in a relationship, you're doing that with your man. If it's at work, you're doing that with your boss, your coworkers. But again, open heart is unguarded, open-hearted. You're speaking from your truth, and it's not laced with pain. You may be sharing pain, but it's not laced with projected anger or projected criticism. Right? There's a big difference between just a really small example, oh, must be nice. He still takes her on dates, right? Versus I miss you and I would love for you to take me on a date, right? You can feel the difference between those. So yeah.
Wow, you really could.
Yeah. And so that's step 2, life hack 2, right? If you speak with an open heart, you'll be shocked by what your man is all of a sudden willing and interested in doing. And then number 3 is You have to hold space, right? Like, women are waking up to themselves. And when you begin to communicate this, it may be frustrating when it doesn't happen right away, but we do have to have compassion and space for our men. We do have to have compassion and space for the institutions that we are making change in, like one piece at a time, one action at a time, one truth telling at a time. And so you tend to yourself and you have compassion and you have patience and you hold space for all the emotional roller coaster that goes on within you, because the world is not where women know it can be quite yet.
Hopefully we get there.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. I think we will. I believe we will.
Do too. I don't know if it's in my lifetime, but I do hope that for my daughter and her friends and all that. I'm like, we'll get there.
Exactly.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. For the people tuning in, how can they reach out to you?
Yes. Oh, thanks for asking that. My website is openheartscoaching.me.com was taken, so it's .me, openheartscoaching.me, and I have an Instagram that's accessible from there. I have a whole virtual workshop on the intermasculine and interfeminine. If people want to go deeper, that's available on the virtual workshop tab. I also have a tab called Free Resources, and there's 2 great ebooks in there that I wrote, for one for men and one for women who want to create thriving relationships. I have another workshop. So yeah, check out my website. You can contact me if you want to work with me one-on-one. Otherwise, there's just easier ways to start through those workshops or through those ebooks.
Great. I will put all of that in the show notes too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, Courtney.
Yes, thank you so much, Raven. It was so fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. For all the juicy deets on this episode, be sure to check out our show notes or give us a holler on Instagram at Hacking the Patriarchy Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support this podcast, don't be shy. Please share it with your friends. Sharing is caring after all. Lastly, if you'd like to lend your personal support, please take a moment to tell the world about it with a review on your favorite streaming platform. We'd be forever grateful. Tune in again soon to enjoy a brand new episode of the Hacking the Patriarchy podcast. And until next time, keep on hacking, my friends.